Look, we did it. We made it through the weekend, which is the easy part of the week. It's Monday morning. This is Bring It In, True Hoops kind of Zoom from quarantine show. There's David Thorpe. We got the playoffs going on. David, how the heck are you?
I was just telling Judy, life is good. We're fortunate people, and I'm lucky enough to have an empty nest full of NBA games for a day. Although that's going to change starting tomorrow because
Oh my God, where you used to have children, now you put NBA games.
Now I have NBA games. It's a win-win for me.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Before we have a lot to talk about, the playoffs are crazy. But just from being a citizen of the world, holy crap! Jacob Blake shot by police in Kenosha in broad daylight yesterday, and like so many of these incidents, has a big NBA connection. This is Carvel. We love Carvel Wallace on this show. You can take a look at that. And this is the governor of Wisconsin. And then this guy, Daniel Poneman, who I don't think I've ever met him, but he's an NBA agent, and he grew up with James Blake, who's still alive and in a hospital, and says he's known him since kindergarten. I just feel like as much as we love the idea of the NBA being a departure, here we go, here's Daniel Poneman, a departure from harsh 2020, like it just isn't. These things are so interrelated. Anyway, Jacob Blake, I hope he recover well. David, you want to add anything?
I don't know enough to add other than, when is this going to stop? This is, I'm glad the NBA is playing in August and not at mostly they'd all be on vacation right now. We're going to be hearing a lot about this in the coming days from these games.
Yeah. Okay. That was weird. Okay. You just published a story. Loved it. You watched a lot of basketball this weekend. You were up late. And the most exciting game in a while was overtime. Luka Doncic destroying the Clippers. But you saw 3 glaring coaching errors in that game. Can you talk us through those?
Yes, and just as a quick side note, it was the best game of the day, but only by a little because the Utah-Denver game was fantastic. It didn't end till, midnight, but
I couldn't stay up late enough. I couldn't handle it.
Amazing game to watch just in terms of pure talent. So, there's a couple of things. As you know, I kind of keep track of the teams that, in your words, I didn't write this, you did, crush one quarter. It's something that I've been coaching, trying to get coaches to understand for a long time, is to try to win big in small moments. Big runs is a goal that you should have as a coach. And so this is not a coaching clinic. If I was doing a coaching clinic, I talk for an hour about this, and I have. But in the NBA box scores, we have a glimpse into what 12-minute segments look like because they produce the score. And I just started looking 3 years ago, just noticing that teams that won a quarter by 10 or more points, as long as they didn't lose a quarter by 10 or more, tended to win. And initially it was one game, and then it was 2 games. And now 3 years in, I think it's 91 wins, 3 losses, and 1 regulation tie, because my idea is you'll at least win in regulation. And there we go. The Clippers won the first quarter huge. And then in the third quarter, the Luka and Trey Burke started kind of rolling. And Doc Rivers, who I really like very much, the coach, just didn't do anything. And there is something, and you may know this even better than me because you used to cover Phil Jackson so much, but I know Phil was famous for, I'm going to let my guys figure it out. Mm-hmm. Now, let's remember he had Shaq and Kobe, and then Kobe and Powell, whatever, so he had a very talented team. I'm going to let them figure it out. And I can't speak to what things were like back then. I didn't follow the game when this was happening the way I do now. But I think it was Mark Jackson said, well, Doc Rivers isn't going to call timeout, make any major changes. He's just going to let him figure it out. And the Mavericks won the quarter, 36-19 maybe or something like that. And of course, they won it overtime with Luka's incredible shot. And had Doc called timeout or 2 timeouts with the goal of, we are not losing this quarter by 10 or more points. We are going to keep this thing close. I don't care what happens in the end of the game. We've got to get back in it right now. I think they would have won the game and be up 3-1. And instead, they're 2-2, and they're facing one of the 2 best players right now in the postseason, although Anthony Davis has been amazing too, because Donovan Mitchell's been the best one. So I thought that was a huge mistake that he should probably regret right now, to not stopping the bleeding earlier.
So I'll talk about this a little more. We've been talking about this crush one quarter thing, Thorpe rule for a while, and most people's reaction is my first reaction was, which was like, oh, you're telling me that a team that gets a big lead usually wins the game, duh, right?
Right.
And so I get it. And then there's a correlation causation thing, right? Like, are we saying that teams that essentially play really well, like, happen to also win games? Like, that seems like another duh. But I think what you're saying is no, that the rate of victory isn't 60%, 70%. It's like 95%, which makes it seem like it might be causative, as in like, as Ryan Pannone was saying on Twitter, like, run a fancy play to win the quarter by 10. Because, and we could this is where your coaching clinic would probably be an hour and a half, is like, as a coach, you can do a lot of things to protect your 10-point lead once you have it, right? Like you can, well, anyway, you can make sure.
And just as importantly, you can do some things to get that lead,
right,
which you may not necessarily do if you're just in a, coaches love to say one possession at a time. Of course, that's true. But all of us that are watching the games, we know the runs that teams go on. And so when you're on one of those runs, maximize it.
Yeah.
And if you're on the other end of it, minimize it.
And the other thing is, you usually don't have, I mean, you might think about it as like, oh, these runs are a little bit random. But the fact is, you usually don't have a game where one team has a big run and the other team is like outscores you by 4 points, 6 points, 4 points, right? Like that's just rare. It just doesn't go. In this case, there was a very specific tactical adjustment. Luka was attacking the big and mostly Zubac, right? And then they took him out. Finally, after the giant run, Doc Rivers made this important trade. And what did that do?
Yeah, so he basically he was attacking. What the Clippers were doing is the Mavericks would bring a screen. Remember, the Mavericks were also without Kristaps Porzingis.
Right.
So you're really talking about one special player, because Porzingis is a terrific talent too. And the Clippers were letting the Clippers bigs, which is either Zubac or Montrezl Harrell, can't guard Luka in space. They'll just blow right by him. So they were doing what we call downing the ball screens in a sense. So they were forcing Luka to use the screen, then leaving the big guy to stay home near the rim to make a play at the rim. And we'll talk more about this later, because the Nuggets are doing this with Donovan Mitchell and equally failing. So Luka would zoom and do all these things and score. And so eventually what they did is they took, with 9 minutes to play, they called timeout. Then with 8:30 to play, they took Zubac out. I think they put in Landry Shamet, and that allowed them to kind of switch everything. And it also put them in a position where Kawhi had not really been guarding Luka very much. And now they have plenty of guys like Marcus Morris. Now, not having Pat Beverly, I think, makes a big difference. I think that it's the story of the series, actually, is how important this non-all-star is to this team of two amazing stars. And it worked, because Kawhi was now guarding Luka a lot more. They were switching screens and then switching back. If Kawhi was really trying to get back on Luka as much as he could, and there was no big just waiting at the rim, they were guarding him at the point of attack. And then, and this is the tricky part, forget about Luka's skill and talents, and he's 6'7", 230, and all of that. He's outrageously competitive. I predicted in a phone call with you earlier, you're one day going to write a story about his OCD issues. He probably has them. He's wildly competitive. It's one of his probably addictions that isn't so good. And he kept isolating Kawhi Leonard one-on-one, who was engaged. It's not smart. And so he, thinking he was incredible, which he is, but against Luka, I mean, it's Kawhi not so much. And the Clippers were able to get back in the game. And actually, they were down 2 late in overtime. And this is where another mistake occurred, where Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson were arguing. And it's a fair argument to have. You know, without question, especially when Paul George was playing as badly as Paul George played, that Kawhi Leonard's going to have the ball in his hands to make a play. If you follow Kawhi as much as we do, and as much as I know Rick Carlisle does, Kawhi used to not want to pass the ball. He does now. Absolutely happy to make the right play, famed by, LeBron would do. So the argument was, do you double him early because you have no one really to guard him, which they really don't, not very successfully, or do you just play him as is, knowing that you're down 2? And Jeff Van Gundy said, and I was shocked to hear this, I would have no problem taking the ball out of his hands and making someone else make a 3 to win. They're down 2, not 3. And the Mavs are up 2.
Well, you guys wish.
Huh?
He got his wish.
Yeah, he did. So the Mavs didn't do either. They didn't double him, and they didn't stay home on shooters and make Kawhi make a contested two. They sent help late. Now, I cannot tell you if they were supposed to. I know this. One of the players on the Mavs, and it might have been Hardaway Jr., I'm not sure, because I only saw it once, got very angry. Like how it was Max Kleber left Marcus Morris Sr. in the left corner. He left him to go help at the rim to Kawhi, which is why Kawhi made such an easy pass. And I don't know if he was supposed to or not. It was a huge mistake. If you just, I know this in high school, we tell our players, we actually have a call for it. It's called Seattle Square. Seattle is our way of telling our players, switch every ball screen. And square means guard your man squarely. Don't force them left or right. And no one's allowed to help off their shooters. It's one-on-one. And we do it precisely in this scenario where 3 ties you or beats you. And you've got to stay home on shooters. It's a huge mistake at the NBA level, and that gave the Clippers the 1-point lead.
And if Kawhi takes that shot, the Mavs can't lose in regulation, basically. It takes a couple of miracles.
Right. Well, the thinking is don't foul Kawhi. Make him make a tough shot at the rim. Yeah. I think Reggie Jackson was guarding him. There's a pretty good chance he was scoring Reggie Jackson, but he was going left, which is where you want him to go. He's not as good as left hand. It's a harder shot for sure than the wide open 3, and it can't beat you.
Yeah.
So then
the tie game. Yeah.
Right. And then you have time left to go score yourself.
Yeah.
So because the Clippers aren't going to wait for the last shot, which they didn't. It was 9 seconds to go. And then to me, the biggest mistake is now there's 9 seconds to go. And the Mavericks have the ball. They call timeout, of course. And the Clippers have a foul to give, which means they can foul you without consequence unless it's a shooting foul. They're not going to shoot free throws. So if you watch NBA games, you know, as soon as the player begins any kind of attacking move where he might end up scoring, they just kind of wrap you up. And the refs don't ever call intentional foul. They do in high school a lot, unfortunately. They don't in the NBA. So as I'm watching Rick Carlisle run his timeout, I'm thinking, well, if the ball's at half court, he's going to run something where they're going to try to score in 2 seconds. For example, Denver had the same scenario against Utah. They threw the ball to Jokic at the top of the key and then run a quick handoff with Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray is flying towards the rim. Jokic fakes the handoff, which draws Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. I think Donovan Mitchell was guarding Murray. And then Jokic fakes the handoff, turns the corner, scores, and the play takes less than 2 seconds. Every good team has this exact same play. It's very hard to guard that handoff. If you stay home on Jokic, he gives it to Murray. Murray gets a layup. If you don't stay home on Jokic, okay. And if you leave the corner shooter, then they have a 3, which is why you get a layup out of this. You know you're going to get the layup because they're not going to let you get the 3. And so the thinking is the Mavericks would do something like that. They'd probably grab the receiver. 1 second would be off the clock. And now you have 8 seconds, and now they can't foul you again. Instead, they run an action to get the ball to Doncic, which makes sense. Running away from the rim he's supposed to shoot at, and they lead him with the pass. He's got to go chase it down to cover more ground coming forward. But so he realized, I can't just slow down here. He knows they're going to foul him. So he pushes it, not as fast as I would have liked him to. I think Reggie Jackson wraps him up. And now there's 3.7 seconds left. All of this to say, Ricardo must be a genius because Luka made the 27-foot step back 3 to win. But it's shabby game management. The Mavericks are not the better team talent-wise. They need to tighten this up. The next time this kind of happens, I would expect they would lose.
Can you talk? You wrote an interesting little thing about how players need a couple of seconds to get ready to shoot. I thought I was like, oh, I bet David knows a lot about this that I want to know. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So with 3.7 seconds to go, here's the thought. Basically, we use the number 4 because before there was the point in the scoreboards, we didn't have it. So 4 seconds, we knew we could get a good shot off. Anything below that, it's risky because you have to make sure you shoot that ball before. Here's the one thing you can't do is shoot it late. 100% guaranteed it won't count. End of story. There's no luck that can ever happen if you shoot after the buzzer, right? So you have to get it off early. And so you'd like your player to shoot the ball at least a second left to remove that margin for error. Well, there's 3.7 on the clock. That means he's got 1.7 seconds to shoot the ball, right? If 3.7 to 2, you've got to make sure you go into your act because you can't just flick it. You're not going to make it. You got to get your feet right if you're going to plan on making the shot. Luka's incredible. He dribbled 2 crossovers and still stepped back. he's Luka Doncic, and he's not great at that shot. He obviously made that. He made a few in the fourth quarter because they switched defenses, and I think he got one attack to the rim once they switched it. He beat Reggie Jackson going to the rim late in the game. The rest of the stuff, it worked. So now you wonder, all right, are they just going to say, screw it? Kawhi, you're going to guard Luka more. I know why they didn't have him do it. And we're going to play our bigs less because it's the one way we can keep Luka on the perimeter, because otherwise he's murdering us in the paint.
So Doncic, Kirk Goldsberry published some of those sweet second spectrum data points according to second spectrum, which isn't taking account for that defender, that offensive player, that movement, that distance from the hoop, 26.9% chance of making the shot. I'll tell you one other little wrinkle of this that applies very much to what you said was if you go to a lot of MIT Sloan sports analytics conferences and listen to a lot of boring panel discussions, most of what you'll learn won't apply ever again. But in the air when the buzzer sounds, its likelihood of going in might not be great, but your likelihood of winning is much higher than if it's a little before, because you're taking a possession away from the other team, right? So, not a very likely shot to go in, but they did bet on this player, this move, this spot, and that timing where, that's it.
Right. Yeah. In other words, you're not giving them a chance to get their shot off. It used to be, and still sometimes is argued, you want to shoot with enough time left to get a tip in. That really wasn't a factor so much when there's less than 4, although they could have thrown an entry pass into the post area and maybe got a tip. But yeah, I see this all the time. A team sometimes will score too early. That's also part of clock management. In this case, Luka he didn't do anything on purpose. He tried to just create space for himself. He's a brilliant player. It seemed it's unfair to say this. Of course he could have missed, but watching the game live like I was the whole game, I didn't even react. It's weird. I react very often. I watch games angrily sometimes. My wife was wondering, why am I yelling? She's like, do you have a rooting interest? I'm like, no, I just get offended by these decisions. I was really mad at some of those things. Like, I wouldn't mad at the coaches sometimes. Like, how do you leave Marcus Morris in the corner? I did want the Mavs to win. I thought it'd be cool to have a 2-2 series. I didn't react when Luka made it. I'm like, yeah, he's going to make that. Like, it was in that game. Of course he could miss, but it just seemed like he's just done this. And he's one of those really, really special players. We're all lucky to see him.
So it's the second longest buzzer beater in postseason history, trailing only Damian Lillard's last year series winner. Obviously, both against Paul George. Sorry, I mean he wasn't directly involved in this one, but and then Kirk Goldsberry tells us that step back threes are literally 5 times more popular right now than they were in 2013-14. And actually noticing, I didn't include that part of the article, but all of the super dynamic, crazy scores that we talk about all the time on the show now this year, they're the ones who do it, right? Steph Curry, James Harden, Damian Lillard, Luka Doncic. Who else? There are a couple others, but that's it. Like this is the move. This is the move. Like there are 5, 6, 7 amazing moves to score in the NBA. Now there's one more, which you've been telling us for a couple of years, is this step back three.
And I don't teach it yet. It's if I had an all-star in my gym right now, I would. If he was an all-star scorer, it's too hard. It's too low percentage. We work on a lot of things, end of clock, end of game situations, and so I do let them do it sometimes, but they don't make it very much. Like it's if you watch, I used to watch a lot of golf, and Tiger was the best, and there's things that he could do and a few others could do that just nobody can do. The idea is great. It'd be great to. Phil Mickelson is famous for hitting a flop shot where he would have people stand in front of him to demonstrate, and the ball would just be a few feet in front of him. It seemed literally through the laws of physics impossible that Phil Mickelson, when he hit the golf ball, it would hit the guy directly in the nads or the nose. What? And he would just flop it right over. And I'm sure numbskulls out on the golf courses at some country club were really injuring their friends or maybe losing a bet in doing it. But it's just a few people can do it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't practice it some. I do think in years and years from now, as the Marcus Elliott's of the world have success, at developing our athletic balance and coordination and core strength. It takes a lot of that to make this shot hard to do.
Really hard to do. There was a little Twitter thing, as long as we're talking about this section of this game, someone talking about like reducing timeouts to speed up crunch time because there's so many delays. And like we've talked about this a ton, but I was just pointing out in this game, there were two tactical decisions where you're just trying to help your team win, where the rules force you to delay the game. So number one, after Marcus Morris's three, if you want to inbound the ball in the best place, you have to stop the game and call timeout, even if you might not want the timeout, right? So there'd be a big argument for not taking that timeout because Lou Williams is in the game. And I love it. Honestly, I love it when that moment happens. They just fly down the court and just make chaos happen, right?
And they do it sometimes.
They do it sometimes. And like as fans, that's what I want, right? Or if it's, I'm a Blazers fan. If it's the Blazers, I'm wishing they don't take that. Like timeouts statistically help the defense, right? The defense gets way better after a timeout, in part because Lou Williams comes out, and in part because they get set. So that's but you want to inbound it at half court for a lot of reasons. Rick Carlisle wants to talk to people. So the rule book doesn't have a thing where you can just move the ball, and you have to stop the whole game for 2.5 minutes to move the ball. Like that's not good for fans. And then what happens as soon as you inbound it, right? Now you got a foul. What? Like, why would the rule book encourage the ugliest, dumbest thing? Like one man hugging, like Luka Doncic, this imported person who can move like better than anyone on the planet in this thing, and we're gonna have him just get hugged? Like that's our TV show? Like that's so stupid. Like it doesn't help anything, right? Like you want the rules to encourage him to do basketball things, right? And the only reason those two things happen is because the Mavericks are trying to win. Trying to win, you got to call this timeout and commit this foul. It's not fan friendly, right? It's maybe advertiser friendly, but it's not fan friendly.
Right? They could legislate. Basically, the Clippers were rewarded for not fouling too much in the quarter, right? Or in this case, the overtime. They were rewarded, but your argument is easily adjusted, which is okay. You were rewarded already by not fouling because they didn't shoot free throws when they didn't foul you. But in the last minute of a game, every foul has a consequence. They can make that rule in 2 seconds.
I mean, it's like crunch time is riddled with intentional fouls, right? For possession or for this reason, right? Intentional fouls probably, which are, free throws are boring. Stopping the game is boring, right? From the we're trying to recruit casual fans, people who don't love the sport, who love the sport. Like this is not what they're loving, right?
And here's the problem. The Luka's, we wrote about this. Luka's three, in a sense, was fool's gold. He is amazing, but he ain't gonna make that shot a lot. He's gonna get a lot of these shots in his career. End of game, down 2, down 3. He ain't gonna make most of them.
26.9%, I would estimate.
Right, exactly. Well, that's what they did anyway. I saw that. I couldn't find it again. I didn't realize it was Kirk. It's so then the game would have been this game, which was fantastic for lots of reasons, not the least of which are really talented players playing it. Of course, it had Luka brick the side of it, which is what probably will happen 3 times out of 4. It would have been like Debbie Downer, right? That's your point. Instead of this really
no. At least that's basketball, right? My point. So you're competing against. I need an updated example. Let's say your Modern Family's on the other channel, right?
Yeah.
So in the minds of a casual viewer, you're like, should I go watch Modern Family, right? Modern Family has like hilarious jokes and some jokes that aren't as funny, and the credits, right? Free throws are the fucking credits. It's like running the credits in the middle of Modern Family. Like it's just not professional entertainment, right? Like this part where you're just like, oh, here's a so-so player making an amazing player into a so-so player and having him stand around while we inbound the ball again, right? Like it's terrible entertainment, right? These people are unique for the step back 3. Like that can make or miss. It's TV that worth watching, right? It's live basketball. It's 10 people running around. It's strategy and effect, right? But this thing where the ball is dead and we're just watching, like it's like we're used to it because we grew up watching basketball.
Yeah.
It sucks as TV, right? Like, and that's an entertainment. It used to be me complaining to you 10 years ago on Troop TV. Now it's a fucking crisis affecting the bottom line of the league, right? Casual fans are not watching. Like that's a problem. Am I done now?
Yeah, I've told you the G League did the 1 for 2 until the last
Yeah,
2
that's
minutes of
good.
the game. I liked it. I
Yeah.
actually love it, and I'm a
Yeah.
basketball purist, so to speak. I love it. It puts pressure on the shooter to make that one. It's snappier. You get the subs in right away.
Just to
And I
explain
wouldn't
in
care
case
if they
we don't
did.
know, so the idea is that if you're fouled and you're owed 2 free throws late in the game, or all game in the G League, you just shoot 1 free throw worth 2 points. Or if you're shooting a 3, it's worth 3 points, I think, right? Yeah.
Right. The free throw is worth the value of the shot that you got fouled on. So if you got fouled shooting 2, it's 2. It's 3, it's 3. I love it. It's so much faster.
And it's a lot. Like, so I put a clock on it. Do this. I recommend everybody do this. Get your iPhone out in a crunch time, and just from when the ball stops for a timeout or a foul or whatever it is, just watch how long it runs. There's a version of the play-by-play that's not publicly available with the real-time clock on it, like to the second. And if you look in there, a 20-second timeout, they sell 2 30-second ads, right? It's at least a minute. Right, it's more like a minute 15, a minute 20, right? 2 free throws. It's really shocking when if you're used to watching high school basketball or whatever. Like 2 free throws in high school take what, 25 seconds? Like it's pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
He's fouled. He starts walking to the line. Maybe there's a sub or whatever. Free throw, get the ball back. Free throw. In the NBA, it's like 90 seconds, which for everyone just standing there is an amazingly long amount of time. This is before we get into video reviews and blah blah blah. But yeah, that's that 1 for 2, 1 for 3 thing is saving like a minute. Not just anyway. Yeah,
I like it. Yeah, I like it for a lot of different reasons. But so the Utah. You want to talk about the Utah game?
Wait, can we really quick? One more thing. Yeah. Luka did a bunch of amazing things, which now, and he's the hero of the NBA today. But without that make at the end, I don't think the social media doesn't melt down in the same way. And then I thought this, and then somebody else tweeted it, but like Trae Young could have hit that shot, right? And if Trae Young happened to have gone to the Mavs and they happened to make it to this point and happened to hit that shot, everyone would be saying, "Oh, all these teams passed on Trae Young," right? Like we're not mostly reacting to Luka Doncic's height and his career and his potential and his game. We're mostly reacting to the highlight, which in fact. Trae Young's capable of that highlight, right?
Right. He doesn't have Luka's game. He's got his highlight skills. Yeah. With that tweet I just saw, if Luka was on the Hawks, we'd be maybe watching Lloyd Pierce right now in the playoffs. Right. He's just, as of now, he's better. Trae's allowed to get better. Size does make a difference in basketball. These are, enormously tall men. Yeah. And he's a bully. He's this big, strong dude that likes to beat your ass. Like some guys don't know how to use their bodies. They tend not to make the NBA. Those that do, right? I tell you, did you see, if you saw the game, he had one of those massage things on the bottom of his foot for whatever was going on. Yeah. But he's still he's not just chilling, man. He is in the game. I can only imagine, again, you're going to write a story one day, I'm sure. Like what he's like. We'll find out. He's still it's a joke how young he is. 21.
But I'm worried about, I feel like he just takes a beating and he moves in weird ways. And
he does take a beating for sure. Yeah. The good news is he's changed his body. Yeah. Because last year he was living the life of a rock star and he looked it physically, neck down. He looks good now. He looks like a pro athlete now. Yeah. And you're right though. He definitely, athletes have always taken beatings. He's taken one, and the ball's in his hands, and this is a super important point, all the time.
All the time.
All like Harden. Yeah. Like Harden, and just the other day watching Harden play, that's a boring series to watch, but also a fun one. He's wincing more than I remember him wincing before.
He lies on the floor a lot.
Oh, he lives on the floor, that's for sure. He lives in the slop. But he's wincing when he gets up, but he's grabbing his elbow. He's just, he looks like an old man. Because he gets treated. The ball's in his hands all the time. There's a price to pay for that, right? There's a tax for that.
There's one other thing that just struck me. I'm like, Luka's injury, his ankle injury in the game before, was not a random injury, right? This is what happens when you bump into Kawhi. Like, it was Kawhi's knee hit Luka's knee, And that happens 1,000 times a season, right? But when it's Kawhi's knee that hits your knee, your leg just goes bing, like, and then his foot hits the floor and he rolls his ankle. But like I don't. Kawhi is the immovable force. Like he's just, I don't know if it's his balance or his strength or his weight. Like, but he's just like, people just bounce off that dude.
I'm not a doctor, as you know, and I'm not very learned. I'm not very learned on a lot of these things. But when I was younger, I 6 feet tall. I weighed 180 pounds in a 32-inch waist when I was a high school senior. Like, how was 180? And I was not muscular. Trust me, that's my point. I always just thought I had huge bones, like big, strong, thick bones. I still think that's the case. I think Kawhi has that like bionic bones because he shouldn't move people the way he does. I think running backs in football sometimes I've noticed as a Floridian, you watch a lot of football, like there are some dudes that they really are pinballs, and they're not big.
Yeah.
Emmitt Smith was 5'9", 220 or whatever. Like what? Yeah. And he wasn't like so thick. I just see him jog up and down the stadium steps at University of Florida. And then you try to hit him and you just collapse. And that's how Kawhi is. But here's something funny about Kawhi and Luka. I wrote an article for us last year where I noticed how opportunistic Kawhi was, where he didn't just go for steals everywhere. But the millisecond there was some blood in the water, he's all over it. Like as soon as you miss dribble, he's diving.
Right. Because they don't call a foul then.
Right. And Luka had a missed dribble against Kawhi, and he didn't dive. And I thought he was reluctant. When is Kawhi ever reluctant for anything? I think he was being judicious, and I think he realized that's Luka. A, they might call a foul. B, I'm probably not going to get it, and now it's 5-on-4 and we're screwed. So I'm going to be conservative and play the odds, which I get. But that's Kawhi Leonard. He doesn't normally do that. That's the kind of respect that I think they have for Luka, which they should.
In the chat, long story, but Caleb's talking about 5'9", 220. Gerard says granite, and then Caleb says that's a golf cart.
Yeah, it's. Having coached in Florida my whole life, I've seen 16, 17, 8-year-old men that played high school basketball, but they were also going to be college football players. And there's a bunch of my brother coached who are all in college right now playing for high-level teams. And I remember one kid, his name was Terry Jackson, who was, maybe 6 foot 180 in high school, but he was a great tailback for the Florida Gators, and they won a championship. And he just had muscles on top of muscles and could carry it so well. And luckily for some of them, when they get out of if this guy played in the NFL for like a decade, they lose it because it's not good for your bodies. But some of these guys can just retain so much. But on Luka, he does have that Kawhi quality now, where it's not like Kawhi is biceps on top of biceps. He's just solid as hell and tall. So is Luka. You just can't push. Like Reggie Jackson's got no shot. No shot. Lou Williams, no shot. They get beat up the way a guard would get beat up by LeBron. Pat Bev, different story.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's the story of this series is we have no idea if he's coming back. If he comes back, he's just another guy you can put on Luka that will make a difference. And I think that they're going to go more to the non-center lineup, even though the centers are playing well for them offensively. And that's why I think you and I talked this morning about Denver and Utah. Denver doesn't have anyone to guard Donovan in the same situation that Doc Rivers was facing.
Right.
If you're just going to drop coverage, you're big, which in this case is Nikola Jokic, Donovan Mitchell is going to have a field day and he had a second 50-point game. He's the third player in NBA history to do it in the same playoff series with Iverson and Jordan. And I think Donovan's 23.
Yeah.
His third year.
You were explaining a lot of what was happening in that series to me on the phone earlier this morning. And you're like, what they should have done is just take Jokic out. Now, you and I have had conversations about Jokic as MVP, right?
Amazing.
This is an evolutionary moment for the NBA when someone who watches as closely as you are is saying, ooh, I know what you got to do is yank out that guy. His crime is being too tall, basically, right? Like
too tall, not agile enough to guard. There's certain players that just when they get ahead of steam, you just can't slow them down if you're 7 feet tall, unless Rudy Gobert is pretty good. But part of the reason why I said that is because not only can they just not find a way to defend Donovan Mitchell when Jokic is on the floor, but they didn't really need Jokic offensively. Jamal Murray was handling all of that.
Yeah.
That would be the trade-off you would make, is like we talked about Michael Porter Jr., who is being picked on relentlessly to the point where I think he was just so happy to be taken out of the game. He didn't want to be the reason why they lost, which is completely normal to have that feeling. But at least he's scoring. Well, in big parts of last night's game, Jokic wasn't, because it was all Jamal Murray show. And Utah had just as much trouble guarding him for a little bit different reasons. But it just
so you have to be, as coach, you have to be like, Jamal, are you about to go all the way off? Because if so, we're going to take Nickel out.
Yeah, you could tell Jamal Murray also was a very competitive dude, kind of famously for. I liked his spirit very much. He wasn't arrogant about it, but I've been waiting for it to happen, actually. In fact, I've even said during the season, the usage percentage between the two of them, Jokic was at 26% for the year and Murray was at 24%, but then Murray had been out for a while. And so Jokic's percentages started going up a little bit, which is a good thing for Denver because he's this brilliant offensive player. And so I wondered, is Murray going to start doing more because he wants to get back in it? And is that going to make their offense worse? No, it's not going to make it worse against the Jazz because they don't – their defensive stopper, so-called, is Royce O'Neal, and he is not proven, in my opinion, to be one, as Murray scored 50 points last night.
I loved Royce O'Neal a couple of years ago. He's not quite the same high-activity guy anymore. I don't know what happened.
He has moments. He is rebounding very well. He does bring energy. His awareness to where Murray wasn't great. This is something I think the average fan isn't cognizant of easily. And the announcers are never really talking about it. It's just one word, awareness or alertness. Yeah. Where is my guy? And these guys have such shooting ranges now. You've got to find them so fast. And I don't think Royce is used to having to be in that position, and Murray's making him pay. Now, we'll see what happens, for the next game. But being up 3-1 with no home court way, because that's an advantage for Utah now. And so now I don't know if Denver is going to be willing to try defense without Jokic because they're going to be a little afraid. Because I think Utah will do a better job on Murray going forward now, maybe even doubling himself.
We did a funny little exercise when we were talking earlier. I wanted to see if Michael Porter Jr. was terrible in defensive stats. And so we were looking, 4-game stats are sort of pointless, but he was in fact terrible. But then I'm like, well, all the Nuggets, if you look at every single player in the playoffs and rank them by, we happen to be on Basketball Reference looking at defensive box plus minus, and it's basically the entire Nuggets team is at the bottom.
It's like so Milwaukee.
It's not working.
Right. It's like Milwaukee. If you look at the defensive ratings for the regular season, it's basically the Milwaukee Bucks active roster.
Right.
Right. They're as a team, they collectively are playing amazing defense. It's why they're the number one defense out there. And so it's the opposite for Denver. Utah's having a field day. In the article we published this morning, I did, a few guys that would be MVPs if you had to pick an MVP of the postseason after 1 week. And then I just felt like I needed to mention some other names who we're talking about, those of us that are watching these games closely. I could have mentioned 4 or 5 Utah players. Yeah. Because Jordan Clarkson's been incredible. He's my least favorite player to watch in the league. He seems like a very nice young man, but he doesn't like to pass. And I tend to like guys who pass the ball. But he likes to score, and he's doing it really well right now. Michael Conley, who I didn't even mention today, has been amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. He might be the most efficient shooter in the playoffs right now. Rudy Gobert, phenomenal. Rudy Gobert is winning his matchup with Nikola Jokic. That's the second most important part of the story behind what Donovan Mitchell is doing. Who is someone I'm telling my son to watch. Just watch the way Donovan's attacking people and the beauty of his stroke. And then importantly, and you know how I feel about leadership, watch Donovan Mitchell when he's not in the game. Mm-hmm. He is an active fan. He's not doing the Luka grim, he is enjoying life. It matters. And then Donovan made a huge three pretty much to ice the game last night. And he kept saying, the camera's on him, I want this shit. I want this shit. He kept saying that. Now, I don't know who he's saying it to. There's no fans in the audience. But that's what he was saying. And to the camera and to the crowd that wasn't there, he acts like it. He acts like he wants it. He's living in that moment like Luka has been doing for a long time. it's great to see, because if indeed Utah survives this series, and now they have to play, they'll play the winner of the Mavs Clippers series, and if Luka's doing this to the Clippers, I mean, Donovan can score like Luka can. The way he's playing right now, it becomes a really interesting next round.
I'm rooting for that. I'm thinking Rudy Gobert kind of needs a little bit of redemption. He is a little, he's a little sloppy with the coronavirus in a way that, had some big implications, including likely giving it to Donovan Mitchell, who was upset about it, right?
Yeah.
And even before that, he was a troublesome teammate, right? I know when we were at Sloan, the Jazz played the Celtics, and the takeaway was basically what people were saying about every game, which was like Rudy's just begging for the ball, and his whole set of teammates are like, no, like there was bad blood. And he was the clear best defender in the NBA for a little while there, and not anymore, right? He wasn't that this year, and so something seems to have awakened in him that you're seeing in these playoffs.
Yeah, so I think on Zach Lowe's podcast, but maybe it was someone else's. I thought that for Utah to beat Denver, two things had to happen. Donovan had to be the best player in the series, which I did not necessarily think would happen. It's happening, but I didn't predict it. And then Rudy would have to get back to that two-time Defensive Player of the Year. Not easy to win twice in a row. Marcus Hall is an amazing defender. He won one.
I found mine very easy to win, but you're right. The second one I really struggled with.
Right. So I thought that Rudy, who's a problematic teammate, his teammates will say he's a diva. It's too much more about me. I don't get the ball enough. This is even public stuff that's happened. Mm-hmm. And I thought that he needed to just forget about that and get back to being the Rudy Gobert best defensive player on the planet, which he was for 2 years in a row, because they needed him for that with Jokic. And, Jokic is impactful whether he scores or not because of his brilliant passing and the way they cut off him, whatever. And Rudy has been fiery. Like, I think the most competitive big man in this postseason so far has been Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is rebounding with such violence.
Oh, I hate it.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. He has got something going on, and now Rudy does too. But it's trickled over to his offense for the first time. Rudy Gobert, I think for 2 years in a row, has led the league in dunks. I think this year he might be second to Giannis. Someone could look it up. It's close. But the problem is Rudy's hands have not been great. They're good. It's stupid to say they're not good, but they've never been great. And he might have turned a corner in this series. He's catching almost everything. And one play in particular, I told you about this. Donovan threw a bullet, maybe a 7-8 feet. It wasn't a long pass, a bullet in the drive. And then Rudy caught it. It's really hard to catch this high when you're 7'4", all arms extended up. He caught it, and then in one big step, boom. It's not easy in terms of coordination to dunk it the way he did, but none of us could believe he caught it, including the announcers. That is something he would – I mean, he might have airmailed it 2 months ago even. It's stuck in his hands. That is going to give his team confidence that you can throw it to him more, which is important. Because if you just guard the driver, then it's not as effective, the pick and roll going downhill. But if you have to account for the 7-foot guy that can catch it and finish, the way like Clint Capella used to always do for James Harden, it makes that pick and roll much more difficult to guard, which is why all the Nuggets are the bottom of your defensive rating right now. They can't do it. They can't guard it.
To your point about him catching that ball, I'm reminded of when we journalists trained with you in your gym in Florida. And one of the early easy exercises we did was with like a light medicine ball, and you throw it off the wall pretty high. But then I'm forgetting who was actually coaching us at this moment. What was the name of the guy?
Mike Moreau?
Not Mike Moreau, but the other guy.
Dan Bartow?
Dan Bartow. I'm pretty sure Dan Bartow was like, he's like, catch it at full extension, right? Like, which you think is the easiest damn thing ever, right? It's super hard. Like you might be 6 feet tall and your arms might be long, but you're not working out there, right? Like, and if you look at highlights of your pickup game, you people watching this, you're not in the NBA. Like you might be able to touch a certain high point, but you're not playing basketball there, right? Like this is once you go through this little drill where you're trying to just catch the ball all the way when you're jumping as high as you can jump and your arms as high as you can, like they're useless little baby limbs up there, right? Until you work on it. Caleb, speak for yourself, Henry. Okay, Caleb can do it. Some people can do it. People who can do it have a distinct advantage in my experience.
You got to train for it.
This is what Rudy's doing.
Yeah, you got to. Same as rebounding. You got to train for it. It's one thing. Kevin Love, he's one of the best I've ever seen. Rodman too, at rebounding at full extension. It's just hand-eye coordination. There's also a strength factor. Some of these guys are so skinny, like Rudy, like you're getting bumped. Like as I've told you in college, the first guy to the ball doesn't win the rebound in college too often because it's such a physical game. Same as Europe. You can bang around. But in Europe, they're grown men. In college, they're not. So the older, stronger player takes away from the younger teenager very often. In the NBA, almost everyone is a grown man, of course, and has this kind of strength to make that play. Rudy used to have it. Rudy's getting it now. Anthony Davis didn't used to have it the way he does now. Davis can take full advantage of his long arms.
It's a giant. I mean, when you see a 7-footer doing that kind of stuff, it really like leaps off the screen, right? Like it's a
exactly. And so my son's roommate is 7 foot, 7'1", very athletic guy that I'm sure cannot catch the ball well now. And as I said to Max, I said, dude, that's your dream, right? Go to the gym with him every day.
No. This happens in the home. I'm a big fan of throwing things at people, like in the home. Yeah, I get it. Keep it going. Here's your dinner. Boom! Like, just mentally alert.
Right.
Let's do this.
Funny. I did not recommend that, but I will tell you one funny thing. I'm always looking for different ways to improve, catching skills, right? Like Michael Porter Jr. is a great receiver. I may have even written this recently. And Jokic is this great passer. It's a beautiful combination. It's like having a great wide receiver with a quarterback, right?
Except when neither one of them can play D and they both have to sit on the bench, except for that time.
Right. That's true. So I'm always looking to how to improve catching skills, but I'm also the least creative coach on the planet. If you came into my gym and you've been in there, I don't think we do really creative stuff. We really try to steal exactly what we're seeing in games. But I'm open to whatever. And so I was talking to Coach Bernal one time, and I said, give me a new one. He said, well, he used to work for a guy in Erie years ago, Pennsylvania, named Bill Peterson. Bill's a longtime NBA guy. Bill was one of my high school assistant coaches. And he was with the Mavs for a long time, had a family tragedy, and went back to college to be around his home more. And then he was the head G League coach for a while. And he did a drill, which we do now, where he stands maybe 15, 20 feet away from the gigantic man that he's trying to work on his hands with. And he brings the ball back this way and just hurls it as fast as he can. Like, it'll take the freaking player's head off. And I'm an old man now, and I threw my arm out playing baseball with my son for so many years. I can't throw it very fast. I've tried. But guys like Coach Pannone and many others can really hurl this thing, Henry, like smoke's coming off the ball. And the player has to catch it or maybe lose their head. And it forces them to focus. And you don't just throw it at his head. You throw it everywhere. That is the kind of thing you have to do. And that's the kind of thing Rudy Gobert has been doing. You see tennis ball drills. I'm not going to say they don't work. I know Steph Curry does a bunch. I do think there's hand-eye coordination, like when you said at home, throw stuff at them. But we play basketball with a basketball. I like drills that actually utilize that which we use in games at high speeds. And the way Donovan threw this pass, it wasn't as fast as what Coach Peterson would do, but it was close. And then he did it in a huge game. I mean, to go 3-1 is big. And it was close. It was a close game. I was really happy for Rudy. Rudy definitely, this, you referenced this. He's taken it personally. He didn't intentionally catch the virus, right? By the way, he wasn't the only person to treat it casually. We still have idiots treating it casually now with almost 180,000 people dead.
No, but he was the only French person.
He deserves some levity in his life and some joy. Yeah. And right now, I'm telling you this, Utah is interesting. Like if the Clippers are at full strength and rolling, I think they beat Dallas and I think they beat Utah, but they're not. They're not at full strength and they're not rolling. They've not been connected all year. And it's another reason why I think Montrez screwed up with what he did. They don't need the drama. Doc Rivers said after the game last night, he called his team emotionally weak. I don't know if he's speaking about one player or two. I don't know that I agree with him or not, but I know he said that. Now, maybe that'll challenge them, or they might say, yeah, fuck you, Doc, emotionally. No one likes to hear that. Adults don't like hearing that.
That's calling someone a child.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't know they're going to handle that great. And they need to play well. They don't have to play their best to beat Luka. They need to play well, if not very well, to beat them. And I don't know that they will. Game 5 is up for grabs. It's not in LA. It's in Orlando with no fans.
Gerard's emotionally strong. Let's see if we can join us now.
Oh man, it's late.
I know. We just rolled right through that. Coffee for the win again. There he is.
That was funny.
How's your emotional strength today, Gerard? You feel good?
Better than the Clippers, apparently.
Wait, for real though, who's gonna win that series? Like
well, they're if the Clippers lose, they're screwing me up because I picked them to win the whole NBA title. But honestly, to Coach's point, I think whoever wins Game 5 is going to win this series. To his point exactly, they're not playing connected defensively. Like offensively, they're fine, and Dallas doesn't play good enough defense, even though they're getting some stops here and there. But defensively, the Clippers are not playing like how they can play, and I think Beverly's a big reason for not being there is a big reason for that. And I said this to Coach last night when I texted him. Everyone going nuts. I'm like, a 28-step back 3 shading left. Like that is a 26% shot. Like unless Reggie Jackson's 6'9", ain't a whole lot better he can do than what he did on that. Sometimes it goes in, sometimes it doesn't. But they're not playing with the requisite force. I know Coach loves that word on defense. They're just not. Yeah. I don't know why. They're not fighting. I don't know. Like, are they bored? I have no idea. They're just not doing it. And if they keep screwing around, they're losing Game 5.
And you know who is playing with the requisite force on defense, and Henry knows this well, the Lakers.
Yeah.
The Lakers are not as talented as the Clippers.
Would they please stop?
But they are. I think it's earned. Like I think LeBron and maybe AD, I don't know, and Vogel have convinced his team we can lose to Damian Lillard. Like that's all they need is Damian Lillard. If we don't bring all of our defensive force that we did all year, then this guy could beat us.
No doubt.
And they're playing as if like I've told the story, maybe not on this show, but a lot of times. My favorite players that I coached in high school that were my best players, because I had plenty of favorite players that were my best players. But the ones that were my best players that I loved the most were the ones that respected our opponent no matter what color of their skin they were, where they were from, how tall they were. If we played them in a big tournament in the semis of the finals, they were fucking good. And my stars understood that. Like, I don't care what these cats look like or where they're from, Kentucky or whatever. They beat every other team they played, and now they're playing us. That means they're good. We need to respect them. And I knew that I'd accomplished something as a young coach. When I no longer had to convince my young players of that, I let my other players do it. My stars were telling – I didn't have to say a word. Like, guys, don't you dare talk about what color they are or whatever. Those boys can ball. So I feel like in L.A., they've convinced their team that dude Lillard is good enough to beat us with LeBron James and AD. So we've got to guard not just Lillard, everyone. Because if you get a situation late, we know Damian, what he can do late, just like what Luka did. And I don't think the Clippers have that connected edge yet. That collective force that you need to beat that guy. They better now.
Yeah.
Now it's a 3-game series.
With that series, it's two things. Luka, so much of it is about belief, right? Like the NBA, everybody's talented. Luka 100% believes they're winning that series. Like you hear him in every post game. He's like, the Clippers are an elite team, but we believe we can – like. And they're all infused off of that. They're all believing it. And the third part is Paul George isn't even playing like a good number 2. Reggie Jackson was better than him yesterday offensively. Like he's not playing like a good enough number 2.
John, I'm so glad you brought this up. I have a stat ready. 93 players have played enough minutes to qualify. And 4-game box plus minus is basically garbage. But for the record, Paul George is almost the worst player in the playoffs. -6.
Do we know why, Henry? Does anyone have any speculation?
Well, he's missed every shot he's taken.
Every shot
hasn't been that great, right?
Like he's getting to his spots, coach. It's not like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, that's a shot that goes in 50%. So Caleb, it's the playoffs. Yeah, well, playoff P apparently doesn't know. But here's the thing: early in his career in Indiana, when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, he was fine. Like what happened?
He's wondering if he's sick or injured.
That's what I'm asking. Is
Yeah.
there any speculation that something's wrong with him? Not COVID, but hopefully not COVID, but something, because he looked sick to me. It easily could be an injury, Henry. You're right, of course. Like we talked with LeBron and his groin, he could be masking something, but he's not. He should not play then. He'd be better off not playing. Just like I said, Steph Curry should not have played the second half of Game 7 in the 2016, whenever it was. The Warriors would have won if they were up. He should have just sat. He was just that bad. Paul George is hurting their team. I think they figured something out, though. Not that it was rocket science, but I wrote this. I don't know if it made the final copy or not. That's the only time all regular season that lineup was in the game for the Clippers.
Yeah,
with Shamet. Did you include it, Henry?
Yeah, that's it for sure.
So it's not rocket science, but it ain't nothing. Mm-hmm. Like they went to a lineup they've never used before, and it worked really well. Now, again, if Luka stops just trying to go one-on-one with Kawhi, maybe it won't work very long. But it did work, and I do think they're going to play with that some. I would give them the advantage. I don't know what Porzingis is going to do. My guess is he'll play because he thought he'd play yesterday.
Yeah.
So now getting 48 or so hours to recover will be good. But it ain't going to be easy. I mean, this Luka is everything. We knew LeBron at 18 was going to be one of the greatest of all time. It just seemed so obvious to all of us who were watching him play in high school and what he was doing. And I'll remind you, he was destroying the top-ranked teams in the country. The local teams in his league were giving a better effort because they knew how to defend a team. The Oak Hills, whatever, he was killing those teams. Man, Luka was killing pros in Europe when he was a teenager. Like, he's just one of those guys. But they're beatable. Yeah. Just because you have confidence and he doesn't give his team confidence. Remember, Nurkic was pointing to this in Dame time, and then they got smoked twice in a row. You can have belief. It doesn't mean you'll win, but you can't win without it. Almost for sure. You have to believe. So Portland has it. Dallas has it. But the Clippers are better. The Lakers are better. They've got to play better.
They're analogous. Those are the two, right? I feel like that's exactly right. Utah is the Miami of the West, and Luka and Damian are the sort of similar, like Luke Skywalkers in this drama.
Well, Gerard, before we go, Gerard, give us your quick take on the only series we know is happening, which is Toronto-Boston, which is amazing.
It's going to be so good. Like, Hayward not being there is kind of a thing, but maybe not too much of a thing. That's going deep, that series, because you've got two excellent coaches, X's and O's, who are willing to kind of throw out anything to figure out how we're going to make this work. The X factor to me is how do the wings on Toronto handle Tatum and Brown? Like, Tatum and Brown are playing well right now, like really well.
Really well.
And can they, make them less efficient? And Lowry's hurt. He got hurt in Game 4, yesterday.
We don't know the MRI results, right?
No idea. If he's out, problems. Toronto's got lots of problems if he's out. But if he's going to go, I like that series going 6 or 7. I think both series, I think Milwaukee will eventually beat Orlando. That series and the Heat and the Bucks, both those two series are going to go 6-7 games. And that Eastern Conference Finals is going to be a slugfest just because those dudes are going to be beaten up by the time they get there. But I'm excited. I'm going to pick the Raps in 7.
It helps that neither team was helped by their first-round opponent, and neither has an advantage in the next round. I always believe the team that was pressed harder tends to have a much higher level of intensity in Game 1.
Neither was pressed hard.
Jogged through their first round, so they'll be equally less intense than what they otherwise would be. Lowry's injury, he's Kyle Lowry. The cliche if he'd play with one arm is silly.
He would.
Lowry would definitely play with one arm. Let's face it. This dude I love him so much. But I think Toronto's the better team. I think Hayward is a big loss, actually, because it's the fourth good scorer. But Tatum and Brown are special players right now. And Kemba. Don't forget about Kemba.
Oh, and Kemba. Which is why Lowry has to play.
I was surprised to see Kemba's actually very high in those box plus minus stats for the postseason.
I almost put him on my unsung heroes list today, but everyone sings about him all the time. That's why I didn't put him in there.
Yeah. Okay, we did it. Well done. More or less on time. Judy's not going to be mad at us. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Trot.
Be safe, everyone. See you Wednesday.
Thank you, Judy.